Well, I didn't want to do this, but here we are. What didn't I want to do? I didn't want to talk about the referendum that Australia just had. Why didn't I want to do that? Well, if I give any indication of which way I voted, I will be automatically classified as to any number of things. I'll either be classified as someone who's trying to divide Australia along racial lines, or I'll be classified as someone who is racist, a dinosaur, and I'm quoting Ray Martin, or a dickhead. Quoting Ray Martin, not my words. Be offended at me for repeating what Ray Martin called, apparently, over 60% of the Australian population. See, we didn't need what just happened. We didn't need it. Why didn't we need it? Because we already had it. What did we already have? We already had, no, it's on my phone, which is why I'm looking down. We already had, being past tense, ATSIC, the Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander Commission. What was that? Well, it was a body established in 1990 and lasted until 2005. Was the Australian government body through which Aboriginal Australians and Torres Strait Islanders were formally involved in the processes of government affecting their lives. Sounds kind of like a voice to Parliament, doesn't it? Now, what happened to ATSIC? The agency was dissolved in 2005 in the aftermath of litigation following its chairperson, Jeff Clark. It was the longest running Indigenous Affairs department to have existed. 15 years. Not a terribly long time for a government department to have run. 2001, ATSIC became embroiled in controversy over litigation surrounding its chairperson, Jeff Clark, relating to his alleged participation in a number of rapes in the 1970s and 1980s. After this, the government began to remove some of ATSIC's fiscal powers or financial powers, which were transferred to a new independent organisation. The government suspended Jeff Clark as chair of ATSIC in 2003 after he was convicted of obstructing police during a pub brawl. It's always a good start. Review of ATSIC was commissioned in 2003. At the time, the Indigenous Affairs Minister stated the review had concluded ATSIC had not connected well with the Indigenous Australians and was not serving them well. And interestingly, 2003, we were under a Liberal National LNP, our supposed conservative government at the time, and our left side, our Labor Party, agreed, 2003, they agreed with the government at the time that ATSIC had not worked. So that's why we didn't need what we just had, because I don't know what other outcome you or anybody else was expecting. And I've got, normally for these I have a bit of a script, a few notes down. I don't have much apart from the article on my phone. And by the way, all I'm quoting here is from Wikipedia. Now, if Wikipedia has all of this about ATSIC, how it just did not work because of corruption, nepotism, incompetence, all the rest of it. If Wikipedia says that, and Wikipedia is a known left-wing activist site rather than a public encyclopedia, that is well established. If that article about ATSIC, both sides of Australian Parliament agreeing that it just was not serving its purpose, then there must be some degree of truth to that. Now, we've had yes or no referendums in the past. The earliest one that, no, I wasn't actually engaged with it. I think it was a little before my time being able to vote. 1999, if I remember correctly, was the referendum as to whether Australia should become a republic. And the No campaign won that one, and won it convincingly because they tied the Yes campaign in knots, and the Yes side was too stupid to work out that they were being tied in knots, and thus began to argue amongst themselves as to what model republic we should have, and couldn't agree on that. Therefore, the ones who couldn't agree, jumped to the No because they weren't getting the model of republic that they wanted, rather than simply asking the Australian public the question, do you want a republic? Yes or no? If yes, we'll figure out what model. You know. And I firmly believe we should be a republic, but that's another conversation. We had a plebiscite, what was called a plebiscite, back in 2017. I've mentioned that I mentioned that on the channel before. I mentioned it in the latest book as well. Grab it on Amazon. Dear Church, Countercultural Christ, What the World Needs Now. And that was as to whether we should allow same-sex marriage. And that was about, I don't know, I can't remember, a 60-40, something like that. Could have been 65-35. Yes. So the yes won that. But that was a simple one-off question. Okay? And both of those were one-off questions. Should Australia become a republic, yes or no? The no's won it. I disagree. Fine. Whatever. Should same-sex marriage be legalised? Yes or no? The yeses won it. I also disagree with that, but that's also another conversation. I've been over that, don't know how many times. What we had here, despite the race hustlers on the left, because they are, how do I know that? Because you can't call someone like Jacinta Price racist. If you don't know who she is, look her up. Okay? You can't call her racist. Not towards Aboriginal people. That'll give you a hint as to why you can't call her racist. And if you do, it's pathetically amusing. That argument is so shallow, it's funny. It's not funny because you're serious. This was 2 parts, not one. So the just over 60% of Australians who voted no did not vote no. Well, I don't know this. I would bet they did not vote no for enshrining Aboriginal people, First Nations people, whatever language you want to use, in the Australian Constitution. They did not vote no against that. What they voted no against was another ATSIC. Because, don't kid yourself, that's what was being proposed. And if you are old enough and young enough, like me, to remember that, then you remember its closure with bipartisan support, mind you. So that's across the aisle. Our supposed conservatives and our left agreed that it was not functioning as it needed to function and was not serving the people it needed to serve. Therefore, what's the point of it existing. Therefore, it was dissolved and restructured and reallocated and whatnot. That's what the Australian people voted against. What they voted against was another layer of government bureaucracy. Because I would pose this question to you: when has another layer of government bureaucracy solved any problem? If you have an answer to that, let me know. Because I have an answer to that. 2 words. It doesn't. Okay? Countless examples. Countless. Okay? Government will put pressure on Reserve Bank, right, to deal with inflation. Reserve Bank will up interest rates, which does nothing. Will do nothing unless you are going to raise your interest rates here in Australia to about 18%, which apparently is on the cards. Okay? Let's have a look. Why do we have such inflation at the moment? Oh yeah, because 2020, 2021, the federal government here paid everybody to stay home. Why? Because of the, Black Plague that wiped out 50% of the population. Sorry, because of COVID that wiped out, next to nobody. They paid everybody to stay home. Okay? Closed borders. Unconstitutional. State governments didn't care. Federal government, at that stage, did nothing about it. High Court allowed it through as well, which means the Australian Constitution is not worth the paper it's written on. Did that solve any problems? No. Created supply chain issues, raised prices, created shortages. Okay. Did the paying people to stay home solve any problems? No. No, it did not. Mask mandates. Okay, did that solve any problems? No, but it sure as hell set 5-year-olds, 6-year-olds of 2020, 2021 back probably 2-3 years developmentally. Well done, government. Vaccine mandates. Well, okay. How many people lost their jobs over that? How many people were forced to take medication that they didn't need, didn't want? What about my body, my choice? Also, how many people now have heart issues because of what was known at the time? Okay, people with family histories of stroke and heart attack and high blood pressure were forced to take a medication that triggered high blood pressure, blood clots, and heart attacks. Well done, government. Let's see, National Disability Insurance Scheme. You ever worked in it? It's an absolute mess. Thanks, government. Need I go on? Need I go on? The Australian public voted no on another layer of government bureaucracy. That's what they voted no on. By the way, were you aware that this referendum cost in the vicinity of $400 million? If you are so worried about closing the gap, put any slogan that may or may not be justified there, where are you better off spending $400 million? Are you better off spending $400 million on asking the Australian public whether they want another layer of government bureaucracy? Or are you better off, I don't know, doing your job as a politician, going and representing your constituents, finding out what they need in order to achieve success in their lives, and dividing that $400 million up there on the ground where it's needed. Hey, just a thought. Just a thought. I mean, the Indigenous Affairs Minister stands up the next day and says something to the effect of, Linda Rawlings, I think her name is, stands up and says, oh, we've only met 4 out of the 19 benchmarks and they're closing the gap or whatever it is. And I go, well, you're the politician in charge of it. Why don't you go do your job? What is hard about that? This is the point. This is the point. Don't get tied into knots about, oh, I'm devastated, Australia, we didn't vote for the, recognition in the Constitution. Well, why not? Because there's billions of dollars of government bureaucracy tied up into that question. If your question was, and was only, should Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people be recognised in the Constitution as the traditional owners of the land, whatever the phrasing was, full stop, or question mark actually, I don't guarantee, I will bet you, I won't bet you my house, but I would bet you my house that the answer would have been 85, 90%, 95% yes. I mean, that was the result back in 1967, fact check me, on whether Aboriginal people should get the vote. That was a referendum put to the Australian people. That scored something like 97% of respondents said yes. I mean, at what point are you the politician, and at what point are you, the yes voter, going to understand that you as the politician, you don't solve any damn problems, and you as the yes voter, politicians don't solve any problems, governments don't solve any problems. They can't. They are perfectly capable of tying layers and layers and layers of bureaucracy and layers and layers and layers of millions of dollars into keeping that bureaucracy functioning, because then it becomes a perpetual business in itself. We must keep this advisory body going. We must employ people to keep this advisory body going. Those people need to employ assistants to keep this advisory body going. And it just becomes a circular pit of money, because then we have to have team meetings, and we have to have trainings, and we have to have manuals, and we have to have an office. We've got to have facilities within that office, and because it'll be government, they'll have to be transferred out every 3 years and refurbished, and you name it. There would be billions of dollars tied up into this government level bureaucracy, which is what the voice part of this was, this advisory body to government. Who was on it? Nobody could answer that. What was it going to do? Nobody could answer that. How long was it going to be established for? Nobody could answer that. Could it legislate? Nobody could answer that. Do you want this bureaucracy? Yes or no? No. No. The Australian people said, no, we do not want another ATSEC. We don't. They didn't vote no to enshrining anybody in the Constitution. Don't let any hustlers, any race hustlers, any yes protagonists, any celebrities who should keep their mouths shut, any washed up journalists who should have sailed off into the sunset, years ago, thank you, Ray Martin. Don't let anybody play the emotive game, because, and this is not me saying which way I voted, I may well have voted yes. I may well have voted no. The way I voted, none of anybody's business. Because I am not interested in playing those games. I'm not interested in being called things that I'm not. I'm not interested in having to defend decisions that I make, being accountable for them, while nobody else is accountable for decisions that they have to make. I'm just not interested in doing it. All I'm doing is saying this is why the no vote was what it was. Because with arguably a perfectly reasonable question was tied ultimately millions, if not hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars of layers upon layers of government bureaucracy. Take that away, and I dare say you're left with 95+ percentage yes. If you're unhappy with the result, hey, you can call Australia racist if you want. It's shallow, it's lazy, it's predictable, it's almost funny. It would be funny if you weren't so serious. $400 million that cost. For what? All for what? Was it worth it? Mr. Albanese, Prime Minister. Was it worth it? Was that $400 million well spent? Or could that $400 million have actually gone to providing Aboriginal communities with goods and services that they need? I don't know. Where to from here? Don't know. And the Australian media coverage has just been disgraceful. ABC's was pathetically, predictably bad. It's almost like as a government-funded journalistic entity, it should be a little less subjective than it was. But every day there's been drip feeding of someone's reaction and how we're going to have a week's silence and fly flags at half-mast and reconciliation is dead. And I would go, well, okay. If you don't want reconciliation, that's fine. That's up to you. What have we got now? Well, unhappy subsect of our society and our culture and our population here in Australia that I guess we will see where we go from there. But hey, if you're the Christian type, you know where the equality stands. That we've all sinned. We all fall short of the glory of God. And that all who come to Jesus, and that's regardless of culture, background, creed. So, until next week. Hopefully, we haven't started World War III, and hopefully the Greens somehow, by some miracle, we consider their weird support for Hamas terrorists. So we'll see. Until next week, God bless.